Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the biggest and most talked about events in the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine's massive strike that reportedly wiped out Russia's land bridge to Crimea. This operation has captured the attention of analysts, governments, and ordinary people around the world. It's not just about one explosion or one bridge. It's about how the balance of the war may be shifting, how strategy is evolving, and what it means for the future of the region. To start, let's remember what the so-called land bridge means. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, one of its major goals was to establish a continuous corridor of control from its own territory through southern Ukraine to the Crimean Peninsula, which it had illegally annexed back in 2014. This corridor gave Russia a secure supply route by land, allowing it to move troops, equipment, and resources between Russia and Crimea without relying on the vulnerable Crimean Bridge alone. For Ukraine, this land bridge was a symbol of occupation, a sign that Russia was digging in for the long haul. So, when reports began emerging that Ukraine had launched a series of massive, coordinated strikes on this corridor, it immediately became one of the most significant military events of the year. According to multiple sources, Ukrainian forces targeted critical sections of the transport and logistics lines that Russia relied on, bridges, railways, and supply depots that connected mainland Russia to Crimea through occupied southern Ukraine. Explosions were reported across Melitopol, Tokmak, and other towns that form part of this corridor. The strikes were described as highly precise, with drones, missiles, and long-range artillery all playing a role. The immediate reaction from Russia was predictable. They downplayed the damage, claimed the situation was under control, and insisted that supplies to Crimea were unaffected. But satellite images, intercepted communications, and even some Russian military bloggers painted a very different picture. Several key transport arteries were severely damaged, fuel depots were burning for hours, and Russian units stationed near the affected areas reported serious disruptions. What makes this event stand out is not only the scale of the attack, but also its strategic sophistication. Ukraine didn't just fire missiles randomly. It hit at the weakest points of Russia's logistical network. The strikes appear to have been timed to coincide with troop movements and supply convoys, maximizing the chaos. Ukrainian officials didn't give many details publicly, but sources close to the military confirmed that this was a carefully planned operation involving intelligence gathered over months. For Ukraine, the goal was clear: to break the land bridge that allowed Russia to reinforce its troops in the south and resupply its forces in Crimea. Without that corridor, Russia faces a massive logistical challenge. Supplies that once flowed easily by road or rail now have to be rerouted either through the damaged and risky Crimean Bridge or by sea across the Black Sea, where Ukrainian drones and naval missiles have already proven deadly. The effects of this disruption are both immediate and long-term. In the short term, Russian frontline troops in southern Ukraine may face shortages of ammunition, food, and fuel. Already, reports from Russian soldiers' channels suggest that some units have been forced to ration supplies or delay operations. In the long term, repairing this damage won't be easy. These aren't small roads. They're complex networks of infrastructure that require months of work, specialized equipment, and stable territory. Things that are hard to find in a war zone constantly under fire. But the impact isn't only logistical, it's psychological. Russia has spent years presenting the land bridge and the Crimean Bridge as untouchable symbols of its control. By striking them successfully, Ukraine has sent a powerful message: nowhere is safe, and no line is unbreakable. For Russian forces and civilians in occupied areas, this kind of message can cause panic and uncertainty. For Ukrainians, it's a major morale boost, a reminder that even after years of war, their army can still strike hard and make real gains. The operation also showcases Ukraine's growing technological and tactical sophistication. Early in the war, Ukraine relied heavily on short-range artillery and Western-supplied weapons like HIMARS to hit targets closer to the front lines. But in this operation, we're seeing a more advanced use of long-range precision weapons, drones capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers, and detailed intelligence coordination. It's not just about brute force anymore, it's about smart warfare. Western support has undoubtedly played a role in this evolution. Intelligence sharing from NATO countries, satellite surveillance, and new weapon systems like long-range ATACMS missiles have all contributed to Ukraine's ability to reach deep into occupied territory. The land bridge strike is a textbook example of how modern warfare now depends as much on information and precision as it does on manpower. The Russian response has been chaotic. Initial denials quickly gave way to emergency meetings and official statements promising quick repairs. Reports surfaced of panic buying and traffic jams as civilians in Crimea feared they might soon be cut off. Russian state television tried to spin the story, claiming that Ukrainian missiles had been intercepted and that damage was minimal. But images circulating online told a different story. Smoke rising from destroyed railway lines, trucks stranded on collapsed roads, and troops trying to move supplies on smaller, slower routes. This disruption also raises serious questions for the Russian military leadership. For months, they have been insisting that the southern front was secure and that Crimea was untouchable. Now, with this strike, that illusion has been shattered. If Ukraine can hit these critical supply lines once, they can do it again. And that forces Russia into a costly game of defense, diverting resources away from the front to protect infrastructure that had previously seemed safe. From a geopolitical perspective, the timing of the strike is also significant. It comes amid renewed discussions in the West about how to sustain support for Ukraine as the war drags on. By demonstrating such a bold and successful operation, Ukraine has strengthened its case for continued aid. It shows that Western weapons are being used effectively and that Ukraine is not merely holding the line but capable of strategic breakthroughs. For the United States, the European Union, and NATO, this success reinforces the idea that helping Ukraine is not a lost cause but a worthwhile investment in European security. At the same time, the operation has likely intensified tensions within Russia's leadership. Hardliners are calling for harsher retaliation, while moderates warn that escalating the war further could stretch Russia's resources dangerously thin. There are even reports of disagreements between the military and political branches of power over how to respond, whether to focus on repairing the bridge or on punishing Ukraine with new strikes. Another key factor is how this affects Crimea itself. With the land bridge disrupted, Crimea becomes more isolated. Supplies, reinforcements, and even basic goods have to rely on the already strained Crimean Bridge or maritime routes that are increasingly vulnerable to attack. That isolation could make it harder for Russia to maintain its grip on the peninsula in the long run. It also fuels speculation that Ukraine's ultimate objective is to make Crimea untenable for Russian forces, cutting it off until it's no longer sustainable to hold. On the ground, Ukrainian soldiers have described the morale boost as enormous. For them, this operation is proof that persistence pays off, that even against a larger and heavily armed opponent, strategic precision can make a difference. It's a reminder that the fight isn't over, that even after years of brutal warfare, Ukraine can still strike back in powerful and surprising ways. Internationally, the response has been mixed but largely supportive of Ukraine. Western allies praised the strike as a legitimate act of self-defense against occupation infrastructure. Meanwhile, countries more sympathetic to Russia called for restraint, fearing escalation. But even those calls for calm acknowledge the reality that the situation on the ground is changing rapidly and that Ukraine's military capabilities have reached a new level. Looking ahead, this operation could mark a turning point. If Ukraine can maintain pressure and continue to disrupt Russian logistics, it could force Russia into a defensive posture for months. A weakened supply chain means less fuel, fewer reinforcements, and slower responses to Ukrainian advances. It's possible that this strike could set the stage for new offensives along the southern front. For Russia, repairing the damage will be a monumental challenge. It will require materials, engineers, and equipment that must be brought in through already strained routes. Every day the repairs are delayed, Ukraine gains an advantage. And even when repairs are completed, there's no guarantee they'll last. Ukraine has shown that it can strike again whenever the opportunity arises. The broader message of this event is clear. Control in modern warfare is fragile. Infrastructure that seems secure today can be destroyed tomorrow by precision strikes, drones, or sabotage. Ukraine has mastered this understanding, turning it into a core part of its strategy. Instead of relying solely on frontline battles, it attacks the systems that keep the enemy running. This strike also underscores how warfare has evolved into a contest of endurance and adaptation. Russia has more resources, but Ukraine has innovation and agility. It adapts faster, learns from each phase of the war, and uses limited tools to achieve maximum effect. The land bridge strike is perhaps the best example yet of this dynamic, a smaller nation using intelligence, precision, and timing to undermine a much larger adversary. For ordinary Ukrainians, this operation represents hope that their sacrifices are not in vain, and that victory, though still distant, is possible. For Russians, especially those in Crimea and southern Ukraine, it raises uncomfortable questions about their government's promises of safety and permanence. As the situation continues to unfold, analysts will watch closely for signs of how both sides adapt. Will Russia double down on defense, or will Ukraine press its advantage and continue targeting key infrastructure? Either way, this operation will be remembered as a pivotal moment in the war, one that showed how strategic brilliance can challenge even the mightiest military power. Thank you for watching and for staying with me through this deep dive into one of the most important moments of the war so far. If you found this explanation insightful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. There's so much more to discuss about what this means for the next phase of the conflict, and I'll be here breaking it all down for you. Stay tuned, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.